Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to explain how to use Espruino running on ESP32 to scan the surrounding Wi-Fi networks. So just as a quick introduction, Espruino is a JavaScript interpreter for microcontrollers, and one of the platforms supported is the ESP32. Installing the Espruino on the ESP32 is not very complicated, it's more of a boring process, and thus I will leave in the description a link for a blog post that details how to do it. So in this tutorial we are going to do a more practical lesson, and we'll do a basic thing that is using the Wi-Fi functionalities of the ESP32 to scan the surrounding Wi-Fi networks. So to do it, we start by basically importing a module, the Wi-Fi module, that will allow us to access all the Wi-Fi related functionalities. Well, in Espruino, importing a module or a library or whatever you want to call it is done using this require, and in input, as input of this require, passing a string with the module name. Then we assign the result of this call to a variable. Note that since we are on JavaScript, we don't specify the types of variables. In this case, I'm just specifying that Wi-Fi is a var or a variable, and the result of the require will be assigned to Wi-Fi. So later, when we call the function to scan the surrounding Wi-Fi networks, we will need to pass it as input a callback function. Why? Because the scan may take a while, and thus only when the scan finishes that function will be executed, and meanwhile we can keep executing code. So the first thing we'll do is basically defining that function. Again, JavaScript doesn't have, we don't need to specify return types to functions, so we just use the function keyword. We specified the name of the function, and then the list of arguments, again without specifying a type. In order for our function to know what are the access points detected, it will need to receive as input an argument, which will be a list of objects with information for each of the access points detected. But again, this will be injected by the scan function, and we don't need to worry about the structure. We just specify here this AP list. We can call it another thing if you want, and this will be our input parameter. Well, you could, for simplicity, you could print this array right away. I'm just not doing this because in order to not show my neighbors network names for due to privacy reasons. So I'm iterating each element of this array and printing the attributes of each object, so we can see how this object is structured. But you could, for simplicity, print the AP list straight away. So this will be a regular iteration over an array. We declare an iterator, a variable that will hold the current iteration value, and we'll iterate this AP list, and we access this property, the length. Will specify the length of the array. Then for each element, in each iteration we'll have one element. We just print some separator characters, and then to the current index of the array we'll access this property, the SSID. This SSID is basically the network name, and I'm just adding here a slice. Think of it like of a substring, just not to show the whole access point name. Naturally, if you go to this approach, you can remove the slice and show if you are testing it on your private setup, you can just print the whole SSID. Then another information that we have accessible is the authorization mode to connect to this network. The parameter or the attribute of the object is called auth mode. And finally, you can access the signal string, which is this attribute called RSSI. It's related to the signal string. So After we do the prints, we increment our iterator, and while we have access points detected, we will keep print information about them. So once we define this function, we can just call the scan function of our Wi-Fi module and pass as input this callback we just defined, this get scan result function. So as I've said, this is a callback, it will be executed later, and thus I've included here an additional print. So we can see that after we call the scan function, this print will execute right away, and only a little bit after we will get the output of our scan. So basically this is the script, it's very simple. Note that this could even be more compact if we used some more advanced syntax of JavaScript, such as using anonymous function or arrow functions here instead of specifying a function, named function. We could declare it inline, but that's a more advanced topic that we'll not cover here. So for this, we'll just now upload the code and check what happens. So just click this button if it's your first time with IDE. So this message is printed, and as you can see, we get straight away our print, our right after scan print. This undefined, don't worry about this, because basically when we do a command like the console.log, we'll get a result of that command on the command line, and the console.log doesn't return anything, so it returns undefined. It's the default value, but what matters is what was printed before. Then after a while, we'll get the iterations of our loop. As you can see here, the names are cut because I did the slicing, but the first entry of each block is the network name, then the authorization mode, and finally the signal strength. And this is it. It's very simple. JavaScript is a very high-level language, and it's very easy to use. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial.